and welcome to Inside Look. I'm Donna Perry. This is the time of year when the Greater Attleboro Relay for Life is organizing their events, awareness, and tributes to those who've been touched by cancer in our area. They are coming out of last year where so much had to go virtual and hoping to do some in-person mix of events and have the community more participating this year. So we're glad to have the discussion. Joining me for our discussion is Barbara Benoit, who is the chairperson of the Relay for Life Committee, Amy Rillinger, director of the Attleboro Public Library, and Larry Kessler, who is a longtime volunteer to all things Relay for Life, well known to everybody, and also retired news editor of the Sun Chronicle paper. So glad to have everyone here and joining us for the program. Let me start with you, Barbara, and we'll tell our viewers we're taping on March 18th, but we know things are coming along as we get into, the weeks of April. It has been probably a challenging time for planning. Can you bring us up to speed just where things are right now as we're getting into the spring?
Sure. So this year is really a transitional year for us. So last year, as you know, we had to go virtual. We did a Hope from Home virtual event in June. And then we also partnered with the library last year and did a Luminaire on the Lawn in August. But this year we are hoping to do, as some of the restrictions, change and we're allowed to do a little bit more. This year we're hoping to do some, smaller in-person type events. So right now we're working in partnership with the Attleboro Library, and we are planning, as we'll get into in a little bit more detail, a Slam Cancer essay event. And hopefully there'll be a component of that we will be able to do some type of small in-person outside piece to that. Right. And then the committee is also very busy working on trying to come up with some other in-person small type of event for later June. So again, transition, it will not be the same as the past where we will not be able to hold a big, huge event with a large gathering with, people coming and going. So this year, it's a pivot point for us this year. It's better than last year, but right. We're not quite fully there for Relay.
Sure. Let me go to you, Amy, and as Barbara mentioned, so that's great that the Attleboro Public Library is the partner to Relay for Life for this season. Let's talk into a little more depth about the Slam Cancer Poetry Essay event. Through the weeks of April is when people can be organizing entries. You have that open up to everyone in the community who's been touched by cancer in so many ways. Tell us, first of all, what people should be thinking about the weeks that you're running that writing essay event.
Sure. What we want people to know is that this is open to writers of all ages. It is open to people who have never written before, maybe just some journaling or notes to friends, but also to more experienced writers. This is not a contest. Nobody is, I'll say everybody is winning. Like everybody is winning by sharing their stories and becoming a part of a larger community that has been affected by cancer. And I know the committee wants to make clear that this is open to folks who have been touched by cancer in any way, whether they're a survivor, whether they know someone, maybe they lost somebody to cancer, maybe they helped someone struggle through treatments. In any way, shape, or form, this is about building community and sharing stories together.
And Amy, now let's give people some of the parameters, because this is, you want the entries. Give us the dates for how many weeks you're asking for this to come in.
So starting April 5th is when you can start emailing entries to us, and that will go on through the first week of May. We are limiting things to about 500 words, just because we are people will be reading these. We hope to get lots of entries. So other than that, we're trying to keep it loose so that people can use their creativity and speak about what speaks to them.
Whatever speaks to them. And we'll do websites at the end to make everyone up to speed. I want to turn to Larry, but first, now they should be emailing at a SLAM.
Yes.
What's that email address?
Email is slamcancer21,
Okay.
it's all one word, at gmail.com.
Okay.
And again, it opens April 5th, and we'll take entries through Monday, May 3rd.
Okay, and now Larry, you are a seasoned veteran of all things Relay for Life, and we were talking about how, obviously the pandemic year in 2020 made things difficult, all virtual, but as you wanting to get people, back involved and thinking about this, first of all, as a seasoned writer in our group, people probably find inspiration, and Mary, it's therapeutic to assemble, a poem, an essay. What do you want people to think about as they look at this, Larry? Maybe they are they want to, but they're a little hesitant to join, this part of your events, the writing event.
Well, I would say, like, I would want them to really focus on like what we said, what cancer, the subhead is, well, slam cancer, and then it's how I've been touched by the disease. And as Amy was saying, it could be any way that you've been touched by the disease, whether you've been personally, it's been a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a grandfather, a cousin, whatever, a friend's neighbor, whatever. It's cancer is such a disease that it doesn't discriminate against anybody, because all ages. I mean, the most heartbreaking is when you go. I think one of the first relays I went to, and I was touched by. I saw probably somebody, maybe a child was under 6 or something like that, and he was bald, and I'm like, this really, like, you're left speechless. And Barbara would know she's also, as both Barbara and I have been to all of them except for the first one. And when you walk the luminaire ceremony is typically at night. They're all lit up, and when you're walking in, you kind of like just sense the candles, which are the bags lit up, and they're either for to honor a cancer survivor or unfortunately somebody who lost their battle, and you just feel so moved and touched. I felt I tell a few close friends that I felt more religious in those moments walking the track than I did growing up. And I grew up as an Orthodox Jew, and now I'm like, just, it's a very personal thing, but I've always felt more spiritually touched, by walking the lap at that time. So we're hoping through the writing to just bring that out and be a sharing moment, but be a cathartic moment. Maybe somebody's not feeling well, they want to, it's a very emotional thing. Every year we have survivors speak, and Barbara can tell you, it's a very emotional time when they speak.
Now, for the planning, we'll go back to you, Barbara, and Larry mentioned a couple of the very well-known events that are attached to Relay. And we'll get into that, because I do want to ask about the True Relay, which maybe is the most notable thing that's understood by the public. But so people will send in the entries, and then up to now you do have like a family night that's planned in June, as Larry was referring to, where people can be reading their entries. What can we expect? How do you envision how that's going to happen in June?
Yeah, so we're still working on the details of that. We're hoping to do something, again, on a smaller scale, but something that we'd be able to maybe put the luminaires out somewhere, potentially a park or, excuse me, somewhere that people could gather, but, adhere to whatever the COVID-19 guidelines are.
Sure.
And also potentially have some of the readers, if they're interested in reading their essay or their poetry, to be able to utilize that piece of it as well. So again, it would be something outside. We don't have all the final details of it yet. We're still working on it. So more details to come, but we are starting the essay event, for people to send in their entries if there are, as Larry was saying, any impact to cancer. They could be a caregiver, they could be a survivor, they could be somebody who's just touched in some way by cancer.
And the for Amy with the library, which is a partner to this, give us some insight on how. First of all, the June family night, from what you guys are saying, would be sort of outside if it the way you envision it can be. Well, it's going to be in that Balfour outside space near the library. Is that what's coming together?
We're hoping that that's the case. We've spoken to the folks at Parks and Forestry and to work together to make sure that the event would work with what their limits are. But we do have a beautiful space right next door to us where people can spread out, listen to each other talk, maybe do the luminaria. And, we talked about other ways we could maybe print out essays and poetry for people to walk through. Lots of good options and a really creative bunch that really want to share the work that Relay for Life is doing.
And as Larry, as you indicated, so at that event, if you envision the luminaria, or that may be later in the summer or later in June, is that a separate event also? And again, we're reminding our viewers, obviously there's going to be a lot of this information. They can go to the websites and your social media pages. So, I realize, again, we're taping in late March, but the luminaria, as you've mentioned, Larry, that's just a favored thing. I think it's so special to people, and they would be, I think, probably excited to see it in versions of being back in person. And what's your sense of that? It's a very meaningful, as you say, it's almost like a spiritual event.
Well, as Barbara has said, we're in the planning stages, but our general plan, leaving up to details is to, and as Amy has said, we discussed having, the entries through Monday, May 3rd, and then we would have time to process them. And we discussed having some kind of a smaller event in the Balfour Park sometime in earlier in June. We don't know when yet, but it would hopefully include a chance for people to read their entries, as well as a smaller scale luminaria. Like last year, we've had partnered with it was in the museum, on the museum lawn, because we had done an art exhibit that people might have come to in February. This was pre-COVID, and they were the people at the museum were very gracious to offer us this chance to have the luminaria displayed on their front lawn. And so that was maybe about 100 or so. So maybe we can do a little more, depending on. We were limited then because it was a much smaller. We had to do 2 events of, I think, 50. But we're hoping that the situation is better, that we can hold it. But the numbers, it would be smaller, like Barbara said, much smaller than a typical relay. But it would be a small event, and we hope to have luminarias in that park on June. And then we would do luminaries again, and whatever we do in the late June. But that could be any number of formats that we've discussed. A possible drive-through. It could be have a brief in-person component. We don't know, but that's what's on the horizon.
Sure. And this, Amy or Barbara can weigh in on this. Something that's happened, I think, over the past year, and this has been talked about not just locally, nationally, with the whole issue and the country's just laser focus on COVID. And I've heard this from other groups who, advocate for this, unfortunately, many diseases. Tell me what has been your impression on the fact that in some ways, and maybe even the media's obsession with COVID, that like people need to be reminded that, people have battled other types of medical, serious, life-threatening things like cancer. And, is that some piece of the message that you would hope this year in 21 that, you're reminding people that people have quietly had to continue with battles, that, sadly, COVID is not the only disease that has affected people?
Yeah, it's Barbara. We're trying to get the message out there and to get our teams signed up again this year, along with the participants on their teams, that we still, cancer hasn't stopped due to the pandemic.
Right.
And we need to continue to raise money for the causes and for the Cancer Society. And, this year and last year we had to get creative. And so we're continuing to get creative and find ways to do fundraising in this COVID pandemic. It is getting better, but so we have teams that are trying to plan some of their fundraisers currently. But again, yeah, cancer is still there. We still want to make sure that people are aware of all the programs that are out there and, the money that we're raising for it, and continue to, to be involved in the Greater Attleboro Relay for Life.
Right. You guys do a great job, by the way, in your social media. I've checked into that, and you did pull off decent fundraising virtual, it looked like, last year, which is a tribute to you. And that probably you hear that from other chapters. And Amy, maybe you do through, as a library partner, that I guess for so many nonprofits and causes that, you're trying to remind people that, we're here, we're out here, and we need the support again. Is that something that you hear? I know there's a network of libraries that are also involved with some of this.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
Libraries have really, people think of books and movies, but really we're such a community connector for people who are struggling with disease or food insecurity or heating. The resources that we share are connecting people to very different. It's not just handing them a book. It's certainly part of it is that, but it is making and also there's people who want to give, who are very grateful for what they have and want to help share and support nonprofits that are struggling and trying to raise money in these times.
Mm-hmm. And staying with you, Amy, I'm sure the public, whether it's young people and kids and families, to give us a quick update that the library, though, is open again, active, and are you,
Yes.
do people around the area say, hey, we're so nice to be back, be able to use it?
Yeah, we are open again. We were doing curbside service only for a very long time. We're battling not only COVID, but also renovations to our building. But we have a very active online presence through the website and social media. We are taking all the precautions with masks and plexiglass dividers and hand sanitizer, quarantining materials. So we just want people to know that when they do choose to come out and talk to a librarian and talk to staff members, it's a very safe place to be. And we just want to connect folks with what they need.
Sure. Back to you, Larry. The whole notion of the actual relay, which takes place in a track, as I said, and I think that's something that's a prominent thing that people associate, with all this, and then there are these other events. What is your sense of, obviously none of that could happen in last year, difficult this year. Is there a wider sense maybe from other teams around through American Cancer Society about, is that more toward a big full-blown thing for 2022? The actual relay, are there, hopes to move it toward a bigger introduction?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that that people who are either people who know really want to come back. I mean, there's no question the letdown last year, and I can't say enough about our committee last year because we really had to pivot, as Barbara knows, like wicked fast, as they say, up here, because it was really tough because we had we kept on meeting of virtually in March, and then we still then thought we would do something, and anyways, so we didn't. So we held this virtual Hold from Home in June, which was actually a regional event with a couple of other states in New England, and we wound up raising more than $60,000, and then we did the luminary on the lawn with the museum, and we were grateful to the museum because the museum was a two-way street because the museum had been incredibly generous to us. That was our first major community that we had last year. We had partnered with them on this art exhibit, but then the museum shut down just on their date. Talking like Amy would know too. Talking they're very. It was their very Friday before their flower show, and the flower show. I don't know, you're not familiar, but the people in Attleboro, the flower show is just fantastic. It brings together hundreds of people. It's
Right.
all ages, and so that was a very downtime. The museum struggled, and we were happy to be partnered with them to help them. It was so they help. We help each other, and that's what we're finding in COVID, that groups have to help each other, and we're hoping that the same thing with the library. Like Amy said, absolutely. You know, we're here to help her, and she's here to help us, because that's why we're thrilled with the partnership offered by the library, because it's a national thing, and
Yeah, right.
libraries are a community center, and so are the relay at its heart. When it's a real relay, is a community happening. I mean, people walking around tents, you see old friends, you see people who you only saw that one time. I mean, it's night and day. I mean, you can say virtual all you want, and you can do fundraising, but it's not the same. Like all of us know, it's not the same. You know.
It's not, yeah. Barbara, to you,
Yeah.
is that what you are, slowly hearing as, the word is getting out that through all the chapters, not just Greater Attleboro, that people are really trying to bring the community back in person. Like Larry said, it's such a community, feed people eye to eye, and really, or you say, this is, I'm thinking of you, I'm feeling for you with what has happened. What are you hearing out there? That there must be maybe a groundswell of enthusiasm to see that, to some degree, that all of this effort people can be back in that sense of literal physical community with each other.
Yeah, so I think there is excitement out there that people really want to get back, as Larry was saying, to, a full relay. So we're hoping in 2022 that we will be able to do a full-blown relay like we normally do.
Right.
And I think this year it's getting excited about doing, maybe a smaller event, but still doing some type of gathering and some type of outside event where we can follow all the guidelines and still honor our survivors and do some type of luminaria ceremony and support our teams in their fundraising that they're doing. And we have teams that do all kinds of different types of fundraising, and just it is very community based, getting the businesses in town involved, and to the extent that we can. So definitely community based, definitely people are looking to get back to a full relay. I think that will be 2022.
Yeah.
I think 2021 will be better than last year. It won't be all virtual,
Right.
and there'll be some in person.
Right.
And as we
Right.
discussed, we're trying to get all the details of that worked out.
Sure, understandable. And again, we're reminding people that this is just late March when we're talking, and improvements are happening and information. I mean, we've had even our president say by 4th of July, have a big barbecue in your family. So, I think all of those things are very encouraging. And just on, as our time begins to wind down, this is for you, Amy, Larry, Barbara, anybody. And I think what's so meaningful that you have talked about this over the years is how cancer really can impact a circle of people around the person or the patient who has the diagnosis. Talk about that, and maybe that will help with some of the slam poetry essay entries where people, you don't have to have been the patient, right? You're accepting entries, you're encouraging, maybe it was just your family, and right? Amy or Barbara, anybody talk about that piece of it, that it's a circle of that is so impacted. Yeah,
well, there's no question that Barbara can jump in, but like the one thing you had talked before about how COVID kind of put other charities into the shadows a little bit, and just a startling statistics. The donations overall for the Cancer Society were down 50%. Now you say, okay, it was down 50%, so the economy. So what does it matter? What does it matter is that there were probably a good, I don't know if it was more than half of the patients or more had to delay their treatments last year. And in some cases, that meant that they maybe didn't survive. So it means a lot. It means a heck of a lot. And they couldn't get rides to treatments, and then the lodging that they have for families, again, who are helping them, the caregivers, the lodging had to close down. So there's a lot of reverberation, and it's an exponential effect. And that's what when I talked about this recently with Amy and Barbara, our hope is to, whether you're a cancer survivor, whether you're a friend, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're a cousin you've been touched, whether you're a granddaughter, a grandson, you have been touched by cancer. So anybody, whether you're a 6-year-old granddaughter or an 85-year-old, great grandfather, please join us.
Right, and I think that's such an important point, as you mentioned, that that how COVID, made people not focus on all these other things are still out there. And just in our final moments, and we will put out the websites, as we say, all the information is also on your Facebook page. And I know relayforlife.org, we want to remind people, has / Greater Attleboro MA, right? And that we know people will find the site and they can find the Facebook. And also to you, Amy, any just final comments? I know attleboro-library.org, you have information for people as you update what's happening with the plans.
Yes, we'll have information on our website, in our newsletter, on our Facebook page. Absolutely.
Okay, and so finally, you're asking, as people do the essay poetry, that can get in through that email you mentioned, that email address, and that's really up through, you're accepting it through early May, Barbara?
Yes, through Monday, I think it's May 3rd.
Yes.
Okay, and then you will sift through all that, and then the June family night is when you hope to bring the community together. And our writer here, Larry, and the Sun Chronicle, now you are expecting to have information going out that way too, I imagine?
Yeah, well, actually, as we're taping it, there's a story actually was published today.
Okay.
But so it will be, it's online now.
And it's online now, right? And I did see that, and that gives people a lot of awareness of everything.
Yeah, it just so happened it worked out that but they published it today as we're doing this, taping, and it is online now, and so I think people can get it, and I'll have updates in the paper as we finalize those dates for the June event, and anything else, I'll definitely have something else.
All right, we know you will, Larry. You're on it, and so Larry and Barbara and Amy, a great discussion, a very important and serious topic. And we know that as the things get a little easier for communities of people to come together, we're so looking forward to what you're putting forward with Relay for Life, Greater Attleboro Relay for Life, for this spring. That's going to do it for us on the program. Thanks all of you for joining for a wonderful discussion. I'm Donna Perry, and we'll see you next time.